You know that feeling when you walk into a room and it just works? Everything feels like it's in exactly the right place. Well, I'm going to let you in on a secret. That's not magic, and it is definitely not an accident. There's a whole hidden process going on, and today we're going to pull back the curtain on the art and science of space planning. Okay, so let's just dive right in. Picture this. A client hands you a massive list. They need offices for 10 people, a welcoming reception area, some sort of quiet zone, a kitchen, a ton of storage. Oh, and by the way, it all has to meet building codes and feel open and modern. I mean, where do we even start turning that list into an actual floor plan? Right. The answer isn't just sitting around waiting for a lightning bolt of creative genius. Pros don't just stare at a blank sheet of paper and hope for the best. No way. They have a system, and that system is what turns total chaos into beautiful clarity. And that system is exactly where we need to begin. We have to really get what space planning is all about because, it's so much more than what most people think. It goes way, way deeper than just shuffling furniture around. So here's the official take on it. Space planning is a complex dovetailing of several processes. Now, hang on to that word for a sec. Dovetailing. It's perfect. It's like a master woodworker joining two pieces of wood so they fit together perfectly. All these different things, client needs, building codes, acoustics, lighting, even just how people move through a room, they all have to interlock seamlessly to create one solid design. So the real key here is to shift how we think about this. It's not just about what looks good, it's about what works. And here's the cool part. It's not about waiting for some muse to show up. It's a methodical, step-by-step process that actually leads you to a design that's both beautiful and incredibly functional. Okay, this brings us to what is probably the single biggest challenge every designer or planner faces. It's that moment when they have to go from all the research and data to actually drawing something. And this moment, it has a name. It's called the synthesis gap. Think about it. On one side of this gap, you've got all your analysis, all your interview notes, your research, your spreadsheets. And on the other side, you need synthesis, a creative, physical design. The synthesis gap is that scary leap you have to make from one side to the other. Now, here's what's so fascinating about this idea. If you skimp on your homework, if you do a really weak pre-design phase, that gap feels like a massive canyon. You're just standing on the edge, looking across, and the jump to an actual design feels absolutely impossible. But a thorough, professional process does the exact opposite. It builds a bridge. By methodically organizing and analyzing all that data up front, you narrow that gap. You shrink it until the creative part isn't some terrifying leap of faith anymore. It's just a confident, logical next step. So the process doesn't kill creativity. It gives it a rock-solid foundation to stand on. So how do they build that bridge across the synthesis gap? Well, it's not with bricks and mortar, obviously. Professionals have a playbook for this pre-design phase. It's a systematic way to organize all the chaos and make that leap feel more like a tiny step. And the core principle of this entire playbook is right here. When you're staring down a huge, intimidating project, you don't try to tackle the whole thing at once. You break it down. You break it down into its smallest, most manageable little pieces. And it basically looks like this four-step process. First, you gather data. And I mean really gather it, talking to people, but also just observing how they actually use a space. Then you establish the hard lines, the non-negotiables, the architectural constraints, the codes. Next up is analysis. This is where you find all the hidden relationships, like who needs to sit next to who needs a quiet corner. And finally, this is the really cool part, you start to translate all that verbal stuff into visual concepts. Okay, so that's the playbook. But how do you actually use it? To build that bridge, planners have a few key, really practical tools that are designed to turn pages and pages of notes into something clear, actionable, and visual. The first tool, and maybe the most powerful one in the whole toolbox, is something called the criteria matrix. Honestly, it's basically a super organized chart. You list all the different rooms or spaces down the left side, and then across the top, you list all the critical needs. How big does it need to be? What rooms does it have to be close to? Does it need public access? Daylight? Privacy? You get the idea. It's a way to get every single requirement down on one piece of paper. And this is why it's so powerful. Once it's all filled in, this one document condenses a massive design program into an at-a-glance reference. It's basically the planner's cheat sheet.
It makes sure that they don't forget that the director needs a private exit or that the conference room absolutely needs a ton of AV equipment. Nothing gets missed.
All right, the second key tool helps answer one of the big questions on that matrix, the square footage. And these are called prototypical plan sketches. Now, it is absolutely crucial to understand what these are and what they are not. They are not design proposals. They're quick, they're messy, they're purely informational sketches. Their only purpose is to figure out roughly how much space a certain type of room will need. Can you fit a desk, 2 chairs, and a bookshelf into 140 square feet? Let's just sketch it out real quick and see. This is how planners double-check that the whole puzzle is actually going to fit inside the box. Okay, so we've got our matrix filled out, we've got our square footage figured out, we're almost there. We're at the final step of this whole pre-design process. This is the moment where we lay that last crucial plank to get all the way across the synthesis gap. And the reason this final step is so important is captured perfectly right here. You see, after all the words, all the numbers, you need to see it. A graphic view can show you relationships and solutions that are basically impossible to spot in a spreadsheet or a list of notes. And that visual is called a relationship diagram, or you might hear it called a bubble diagram. It's really just a simple, abstract map of the whole project. You draw a circle for each space, bigger circles for bigger rooms. You physically put the circles for rooms that need to be close, right next to each other. And then you draw lines connecting them. A thick, heavy line for a super important connection, like reception to the waiting room, and a skinny line for a less important one. Simple. In that diagram, that's the breakthrough. It takes that whole crazy web of data from the criteria matrix, and it turns it into a clear visual game plan. Now, it's not a floor plan yet, not by a long shot, but it's the abstract pattern, the DNA, that the final floor plan will be built on. It is that final confidence step across the gap. So, at the end of the day, there it is. The real secret to a space that just feels right isn't some random stroke of genius. It's this. It's this invisible foundation. It's all the hours of interviews, the detailed matrix, the quick calculations, and the abstract diagrams that happen long before a single wall is ever drawn on a final plan. So the next time you walk into a really well-designed room, I want you to try this. Don't just look at the furniture or the paint color. Try to see the hidden logic underneath it all. Try to see the invisible process. What connections were prioritized? What problems got solved to make this space feel so effortless? What will you see now that you know what to look for?